If you're a skincare brand owner trying to scale your Shopify store with paid ads in 2025, this video is for you because I'm going to break down how I helped a skincare brand go from 47K per month to over 400K per month in the span of 9 months. So pretty much 9xing their business Shopify sales in 9 months. And I'm going to walk you through the exact steps that I took with this brand and I helped this brand implement so that you can implement it by yourself. Before we started working together, this brand was, pretty much stuck, right? They have been burned by agencies, unfortunately, and that forced them to spend a lot of money. They made more revenue there, but were actually losing a bunch of money every single month, right? So the acquisition was completely unprofitable, very negative, and that obviously, put a lot of pressure on them financially. That's why they said, okay, stop, enough with this. We don't want to work with any agency again because we don't want to run into the risk of being burnt again. So what they decided was to say, okay, let's give it a shot. Let's try it by ourselves. But then obviously, frameworks and stuff were missing. So that's why they decided to work with me. And what I helped them to do is basically just get more structure into the whole acquisition. And ultimately, fast forward 9 months, and now they're making 400K a month. They're making as much profit as they've ever done, right? So not only the revenue exploded, but the profit exploded, which puts them into a way better financial position. And now they're basically actively looking towards, okay, how can we scale the company to $1 million a month in Shopify sales? Now, the other thing is that now they're spending like 30 minutes a week actively optimizing ads, right? So it's not that it's super stressful. It has never been more fun than currently. So this is kind of like the transformation that they've went through. And in this video, I'm going to break it down so you can do it by yourself, right? And I would say, let's jump right in. One thing actually that I want to mention before we jump into all of this is that their wholesale orders also exploded, right? Which basically almost gets them to a 8-figure run rate just in the span of a couple of months, right? So just to show you that this is possible. And this is still possible, even though some people claim that, Meta doesn't work anymore, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so let's jump right in. Okay, so here, very quickly, this is what we're going to talk about, right? We're going to talk about, or I'm going to show you how we chose a front-end offer, how we use cohort tracking, cohort analysis to identify this front-end offer, make sure that we're spending on the right, product. That also helps us in the back end. Creative testing framework, we're going to talk about this. Ad account structure. Also, exactly how we improve the funnel, right? So that it's not just generic product pages. And ultimately, why ROAS is not the right metric to look at, okay? So let's jump right in here with the situation a little bit more in detail. I already touched up on this, but essentially they were hovering around this 40-50K per month, right? Low profits, high stress, not having clarity on what is working in the ads. Like, yes, of course they had ads running, but they were unprofitable, very low return on ad spend, and nothing that is scalable, right? Which can be really frustrating. Obviously burnt by agencies. I already mentioned that. Spending aggressively, this is something that I hear a lot, like agencies, this fairy tale of, you have to like really push and invest even if the return on ad spend is negative, and then at some point it flips and it will be profitable. It's BS. And if you do that, you really have to know all of the numbers of your business down to the T, which those agencies definitely don't do. Like, they don't do the effort, put the effort in. I'm talking about 99.9% of the agencies. So we don't want to do that. Like, I'm the guy who always tells brands, and this is what I teach, to be profitable on the first sale, right? Especially if you're bootstrapped, if you don't have like huge VC fund backing you. But even if you have that, Still, I would try to be as profitable as possible in the beginning, right? And then you can afford other strategies. Without going too much into detail there, yeah, essentially they decided to take things in-house, and initially, they felt overwhelmed. Okay, so wow, now we need to manage the ad account, now we need to manage the creatives. Like, how do we do that? It will be so much work. It will be so, it's so intangible if you've never done it. But now, essentially, the first thing that I did was basically to establish a certain mindset, and shift the strategy. Okay, this is very, very important and often overlooked. So the first goal is not to chase return on ad spend in the Meta account, right? Because this is really misleading. But we actually want to focus on real business KPIs, right? Ultimately, we want to scale our EBITDA. Okay, we want to scale our profits, right? And to really, bring value to the company and grow the company. That's the ultimate goal. You don't have anything from like a return on ad spend of, I don't know, 2 point something in your ads manager, when in reality, it doesn't really move your business. And I'm talking about today, but also in the next months, okay? And I'm going to talk about this in a second when we talk about front-end offer. Right, so basically we looked at what is a customer acquisition cost that we can afford, but how can we also make sure that we acquire people that will stay for the long term, right? They are not just like buying one product and they never come back, right? That's another big thing. And yeah, ultimately just understanding that there's a system to this, right? It's not like the wild west and you're just trying a bunch of stuff and praying and hoping that something works. This is not what we want to do. We want to take as much risk out of this operation as possible. And that's what I do with providing systems, right? Step-by-step systems. And you'll see we will get into some of these systems. And that's really important to understand, that there is a process to getting to a profitable acquisition, right? That you can follow. Okay, now the very first thing is the front-end offer. Very important, right? So initially, what they did is, and what I see a lot, right, when it comes to skincare, but also in other like supplements and other niches, is that basically people or agencies or whoever is trying to sell single products, right, single items, right? So this is bad for a couple of reasons. Number one is that you basically don't have enough room to spend on a new customer, right? So let's say if your single item costs, I don't know, like $35, then you subtract COGS, you subtract taxes, whatever the case may be, and all of a sudden you're left with, okay, you have to make it work with a CPA of $17 or $15 to make a tiny amount of profit, okay? And while this might work at very low spend levels, right? What I'm asking is what is the goal? Our goal is to scale the company to 500K a month, $1 million a month, right? Is this CPA, is this CAC sustainable when I'm thinking about this goal? Right? Is it realistic that I have like a $17 CAC when I'm doing $1 million a month? Answer is, most of the cases, no, right? So why would I start out with this, right? So it really doesn't put you in a great position. It puts you into a very, very bad position. And then you might be trying everything, like when it comes to creatives and funnel, you can do everything right. If you do this wrong, you are doomed to fail, right? Because there's no way that you can actually make it, scale it, and also to higher spend while being profitable. And this is exactly the point, right? So we moved away from low AOV offers because initially they had one product and that was their bestseller. And they basically had very low AOVs, right? Which put them into a very difficult position. It was impossible to scale, right? And even that was not profitable, right? So then what we did, the first thing that I did was basically to look at, okay, let's look at all your data. Okay, let's look at what do first-time customers actually buy, right? And this is something that I always recommend. Look at your Shopify sales of the last 90 days, for example, or last 6 months, and look at only first-time customer sales, right? And then you look at, okay, what are the products that people purchase, and you also add the column AOV. So this way, it breaks beliefs in many cases, because some people think, yeah, no, like somebody doesn't know me, and why would they pay like $110? Why would they pay $100? Right? They just want to try stuff out and like have one product to try. But only because you think like that doesn't mean that all of the people work like that. Okay? And what you see in many cases is that you see that there are products, bundles specifically, that people purchase on their first purchase, and they're spending $100, right? Now, even though you don't actively advertise this, and this is very important. This is a huge opportunity, right? So this is one thing that I looked at. Then the other thing that we looked at is obviously cohort analysis. Okay, so, and this is something that very few people are familiar with, but it's one of the most important analysis that you can look at in your business, because it tells you, I'm not going to like explain it into detail, but essentially what I want to understand is, if a person buys product A, okay, what is, let's say, the revenue that they generate on day one, okay? It's basically, whatever they purchased on the first day, right? Let's say it's $50. And then I also want to understand what happens after that, right? Do these people come back, right? When do they come back? How much do they purchase? And a very easy way to track that is the customer lifetime value, right? So basically you look at, okay, after 3 months, what is the average revenue that people that bought product A have generated? That's your customer lifetime value, right? And this might be 60, right? And then after 6 months, how much is the lifetime value? Did the lifetime value increase? Maybe that's 65, okay? And then you might have another product where people purchase something for, let's say, $90 on their first sale, right? And then you have just a way higher uplift here, where you can see, this customer here, B, is worth more, right? So it's basically the uplift is higher, right? The customer lifetime value increases more. And then also on the first purchase, they spend more, right? So they give me more room to actually spend on this customer. And that's exactly the point why many skincare brands specifically are failing, because they focus on these single products that might have like an okay return on ad spend. They don't have the belief that people actually are willing to purchase something that is of higher value right up front, and that those people are also better customers, right? So you're not only going from month to month trying to acquire customers that never come back, but you're basically stacking these customers on top of each other, right? So you're acquiring customers this month, but they come back next month, the month after, right? And then on top of that, the next month you acquire the next batch, and they also come back. And this leads to your recurring revenue just going up and up every single month, okay? Very important lesson. Otherwise, this wouldn't have been possible, okay? So that was a quick, sidetrack to talk about cohort analysis. Exactly. And ultimately what we did, we built an offer, right, that attracted the right customers profitably. So we looked at the data first, understood, okay, those are the type of customer. If we would have only this type of customer, our business would be, completely changed. Okay, and then we went out and optimized basically this front end offer, and only acquired people through this front end offer. Right. So the goal always with the front end offer, is to have a high AOV, right, and make it highly attractive. Highly attractive. Okay, so the idea is basically to say, I'd rather have a bundle that costs 90 bucks instead of 35, but they're effectively saving 25%, okay, from the real value of the bundle, or 30% of the real value of the bundle, right? So, and this is very important because some people say, yeah, I don't want to give discounts. Trust me, like you want to grow your business. I think that's more important than not giving discounts, right? When it comes to priority. And this is what enables you, like you're essentially acquiring a higher value customer. So then it's totally fine. Like they still pay a 90 bucks. It's not that you give a 25-30% discount on a $30 item, right? So it's also about who do you acquire and what's the quality of customer, okay? So that was the first thing. Then we decided, okay, we'll do a bundle, okay? And we constructed this bundle so it makes sense from, let's say, unit economic standpoint. Then that was done. Now we're talking about the creative testing framework. That's the next step, okay? So basically, the goal is obviously to get into a weekly flow, right? To weekly test new creatives, right? But before we can do that, we need to do some, let's say, fundamental tests, right? That just make sure that we're not doing all these creative testing efforts on the wrong stuff, on the wrong messaging, okay? So the first thing is always to research angles, okay? So basically, now that we have our front-end offer, okay, as we discussed, now we're, first of all, identifying what are potential angles, right? What are potential angles for this front-end offer? So let's say we're in skincare, you have like a skincare routine of like, let's say 3 products, 4 products that can help with multiple things, right? So they could help reduce age spots, right? So that would be one, for example, okay? Age spots. They could help reduce wrinkles, like this routine, or just like redness, irritation, okay? So those are already 3 different benefits of your product, right? Now, instead of, and this is also again where a lot of brands, what a lot of brands do wrong is they try to advertise everything at the same time. Like this routine can do all of these 3 things, right? But then the message that people receive is basically this can do everything and nothing really well. So what we have to understand is which one of those is the one that resonates the most with my market. And then you want to double down on one and primarily position your product as a solution, the perfect solution to this specific problem or this specific pain point, right? So the first step is always to identify and understand like what are the potential angles, right? And you do this by understanding what are people writing in the reviews, right? So of your products, right? What do they say? Like, how did did your products help them? What was their main motivation why they bought the product, and what did it actually help them with, right? Then you can also go on Reddit, right, and understand, okay, why do what do people care about the most, right? And I mean, in my mentoring, I basically have like all of this mainly with AI now, powered with AI, right? Obviously, there's always a manual component, but like all this research, like finding these different spots, these different angles, identifying them, validating them. This is all powered by AI, and like you can literally do it in 48 hours, right? That's how I teach people to do it, to set it up, right, in 48 hours. But you can also do this manually, right? The important thing is to understand the principles behind it. So what you want to do is first identify them and then validate them, okay? And this, I said it in multiple other videos, is just with simple static ads, right? You have your product, your routine here, right? And basically, after you have your routine, you have a big fat claim, and this claim just represents the angle, right? So example, the age spots on my hands finally went away. Okay, this is one message for the angle age spots, right? For each angle, you should have like 5 to 10 different messages, and then you just test these static ads against each other and figure out where do I see the most traction. Okay, so this is really the first basic step, so that we don't like produce a bunch of creatives for redness and irritation when we could have avoided that. So this is very important to first validate, and then you take the next step. Okay, so this is the exact same thing that we did in this case, was just figuring out, okay, what are the potential angles? Let's test them with very simple creatives, and then let's double down on the ones that are working. Okay, and here just to show you that those are the differences between, let's say, the negative creative flywheel, how I call it, and the positive creative flywheel. Negative one is just like to come up with, subjective, unvalidated ideas, and then directly go to produce expensive content, expensive UGC, which takes a lot of time, which costs a lot of money, but it's just based off of like subjective stuff or very superficial research, right? And this hurts you down the line, right? Because ultimately, you just throw stuff at Meta, you just throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks, and maybe you get lucky and find a winner, but the win rate is very, very low, which just means like you spend a bunch of money, time, and energy to find like one or two creatives, and then they just stop working after a couple of weeks, right? That's kind of like the usual story that I hear. And maybe you iterate on the winner until it's dead, but then you go back to, or the agency goes back to just like coming up with random stuff. And the counterpart to that, and this is the process that I teach, is basically, and I also had to learn that, right? I had to go through a lot of failure to get to that point, to understand, okay, it makes a lot of sense to spend more time researching, like thoroughly researching, who is my target audience, who is my potential target audience, and then even not just like jumping straight to the conclusion, okay, now I'll produce content for that. No, validate which one actually works for my specific offer that I have, right? And then basically exactly validate them, and then you identify the winners and you double down on this angle with more creative types. And that's what this is an iterative process. This is what you do constantly, right? So research never really stops, validation never really stops, and finding new creatives also never really stops. But this saves you a lot of money, a lot of money. So exactly. Then, as I said, we validated angles, tested a bunch of creative types, right? In this case, mostly founder ads, static ads, a little bit of UGC. And the focus, and this is another one that is very important, is that the focus is on low frequency and high converting top of funnel ads, okay? So the idea is that you have to think of your ads as a funnel, right? And I'm not, my idea is not to rebuild this funnel within Facebook, like the typical top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. We don't have to worry about this. We only have to worry about what are the types of assets that we're producing. And it's very important, like, to understand which creatives actually alter the trajectory of your account. And from my experience, those are the top of funnel creatives that are also converting at a high clip. Okay, those are the types of creatives that really change the game, and that really can, you upload them, and from there you all of a sudden see your new customer return on ad spend, scaling up, and you can basically spend more money every single day. Okay, I'm talking about these kinds of creatives, and those are the ones that are the priority. Okay, so you don't have, on the flip side, what I want to say is you don't have anything from producing a bunch of bottom of funnel creatives with like static ads where you have, hey, 20% or something like this. This will not change the trajectory of your account, right? Because if the funnel is dry, you're just going to hit the same people over and over and over again, right? So what I want to avoid is to produce a bunch of creatives only because they're easy to produce, but ultimately they don't make an impact, okay? And after you found these, that's where we built out the rest of the creative stack, right? So once we established, okay, this is the winning angle, those are the winning creative types for this angle. In this case, it was founder ads. Okay, let's double down on founder ads. Let's do more founder ads, right? Let's do iterations on the founder ad, okay? Then we established this here, this part. That already enabled us to scale significantly. And then we basically looked at, okay, for this specific angle, what are creatives that are, helping people that might have been interested but not convinced yet to be convinced and consider actively purchasing this product. Okay, so those are like social proof creatives, creatives that explain more in detail how it works, right? What the ingredients are, and so on and so forth. What the offer is, obviously. So here we're basically trying to work through all of the objections, but that's the second step. Okay, obviously, killed losers fast, scaled winners systematically with iterating. Very important. This a lot of people sleep on it. You might have a winner in your ad account, but if you don't do iterations, it's just going to die, and you're trying to come up with something new when you already had something that worked. Okay, and that's the goal of this step, is to really create a creative stack that is scalable. Right now, what else did we do? Then obviously, account structures is something that I get asked about a lot, and the answer is very simple: is one primary campaign, right? That's our evergreen campaign. This is how I call it. This is the evergreen campaign. Okay, for testing, scaling, stability, and data consolidation. Okay, so my goal is not to have multiple campaigns scattered in my ad account. I want one campaign, and in this one campaign, we basically upload all of the tests, creative tests, and we have our control ad set where we collect all the best creatives. This is the structure. Exactly, here I have it. So basically, you have the evergreen campaign. You have one control ad set where you combine all of your winning ads, right, that you had over time. And then it's a very simple structure, right? Every new creative test, and with creative test, I'm talking about, let's say you recorded a new founder ad concept. Then you have record 3 hooks for this founder concept. I would always recommend, if you do a creative, don't just do like one creative, but always have like 3 to 5 hooks in the beginning, or different pattern interrupts, because this just gives the algorithm more chances to explore a winner. Okay, so you just have more chances of winning, right? Without having to produce massive amounts of content. Okay, so testing ad set 1, very simple. You put in 3 to 6 ads. They're same angle, obviously, and also same creative type. So in this case, it will be a founder ad with 3 different hooks, and you put these into one ad set. That's one creative test. That's it, right? And then the next step is basically to analyze and understand, okay, does this founder ad, this new creative test that I'm doing, does it earn spend, right? Against my best performing, like my best creatives of all time, so to say. And that's where obviously the optimization comes in. But the thing is, with this campaign structure, it's literally like you can manage this in 30 minutes in 30 minutes per week. Okay, and that's not an exaggeration. Like I'm not exaggerating here. That's literally what it is, right? 30 minutes a week, sometimes even less, right? And it's nothing else than looking at, okay, what is performing, what is the frequency of each of these ad sets, and ultimately, what should I turn off? Should I turn something off? Do I see in the back end that I hit my numbers? If so, let's just increase the spend, okay? And this you do every single week. Very simple, right? Some people don't believe that it's that simple, but I've seen it now multiple times, many times. It's always this way, right? So because with this system, what I'm teaching you, or what I'm teaching brands, is to focus on the stuff outside of the ad account, because this is what's going to bring change into the ad account, right? So if you have the wrong research, bad creatives, bad messaging, a bad funnel, no real front end offer, you can try to fix like whatever you want to fix in the ads manager. It's not going to work, right? And with this system, it actually forces you to not spend time in the ads manager and trying to optimize and over optimize stuff every single day, but rather spend this time and energy and effort into creating better assets, more and better assets, okay? So then in this specific case, we saw that because it's a very, let's say, more skeptical audience, we saw that it made sense to just spend a little bit more on this bottom of funnel and middle of funnel part, right? So what we did or decided to test was just a secondary campaign where we had more social proof, more, let's say, real case studies, right, of people that have used the product, and that enabled us just to increase the overall efficiency, right? But that's just in this specific case. Again, you can see that it's not a one size fits all. It's based on principles, right? If the principle is basically we need to make sure that we serve our target audience so that they can feel comfortable purchasing our products, right? And in this case, that's something where what I said, okay, this makes sense to just further, boost the social proof and take away risk from the purchase. Okay, so yeah, as you can see, no chaos. Like, it's very simple and easy. In a couple of minutes, seconds even, you can understand what's going on in the ad account instead of having 10 campaigns and needing a PhD to understand where the money is going, what's happening. We don't want that. Okay, next thing, funnel structure. Okay, so basically here we transitioned from sending cold traffic to generic PDPs, product pages, to angle-based funnels. In this case, listicles, and this is something that I preach for a long time now. If you send someone that has never heard of your brand, is ice cold, has never heard of your product, right? Maybe he's a little bit skeptical on if it actually works. If you just send them straight to the product page, especially in a target audience where they tried out multiple things before and they don't really believe that it's going to work, you're leaving a lot of money on the table, right? And this is what I see still to this day, which I cannot really understand a lot of times. And maybe that's the case for you. I mean, not to blame anybody, but this is really important that you get this message. This is not the way to do advertising in 2025 and going forward. What we need to do is to better understand the target audience, better understand their pain point, and then build experiences that are very congruent from creative to landing page to checkout then, so that people understand, hey, I have this pain point, let's say age spots, and then I have space to position my product as the perfect solution against age spots, explain why it works against age spots, what the ingredients are doing, what the studies are saying, right? Specifically talking about age spots, and then maybe, say mentioning the other benefits as well. But the main point why people clicked in the first place and got interested in the first place is this specific pain point that they tried to resolve. So we should mainly, almost only, talk about this pain point and how our product solves it. The rest, they don't care about the rest, okay? And this is what in many cases the PDP doesn't do, right? So plus you have to consider we're selling a higher AOV product now, right? So instead of them, purchasing something for $30, they purchase something for $90 or $100. And this is very important. Like, when you think about yourself, like, if you pay, like, you would go into a store and it's like something for $20, like, yeah, okay, let's try it out, whatever. Or, it's very easy to make a purchasing decision. But if the same solution costs $120 now, you want to understand a little bit more what it's doing. Why that price, right? I could also buy something for $20, and then you realize, oh no, it's not the same thing, right? This actually doesn't solve anything, right? It's just surface level. But these products, this is the perfect routine, and they exactly help, against this. Plus, I see so many other people that had the same issue as I do, and they resolved it using this, okay? So this is the kind of conversation that we have to have, and for that we need a little bit more space, right? And that's why it's important to really have these pre-sale pages, right? These funnel pages, these landing pages, which enable us to have a lower customer acquisition cost on scale, right? And maintain our customer acquisition cost while we're scaling, Okay, so yeah, very simple explanation here also. We don't want our creative to be overloaded, right? Because when you send to the PDP directly, basically the job of your creative is to attract, educate, and partly convert. And when you look at like some of the attention spans that we see nowadays, where people watch a creative for like 3 seconds on average, or 5 seconds on average, this is very unrealistic, right? So how do you want to transport all of this information in like 30 seconds? That's where it breaks, right? So what we want to do instead is to, split this out and basically say the main part of our creative is to attract, right? Here is to attract and do a high level education, okay? Then we have one part, which is a landing page that mainly is there to educate people about why our product is the solution to their pain, plus creating trust, right? And then we have our product page with a cold friendly offer that actually the main job is to obviously reiterate some of these things here, but mainly to convert. And this is what makes this really, really scalable, because you don't need to have like a very educated customer that comes in. You don't need to be, the customer doesn't have to be so educated, right, when they come in. But here, you actually can scale to broader audiences, colder audiences, because you make sure that they maintain a certain level of education when they hit the product page. Okay, this is what we do here. Very important high level concept. But yeah, finally, how do we implement it? We identified the angle, and I helped them to build a listicle for this specific angle that talks about how the product solves the problem for this specific angle. Very simple, right? And that enabled us to really maintain low frequencies and scale to very cold audiences very profitably. Okay. Next thing, scaling decisions. Okay. So again, here, like, we want to take the emotion out of the scaling as much as possible. And this is sometimes hard. I mean, for me, it's not hard anymore because I trained myself to do it. But I know in the beginning, especially when you're running ads by yourself, you're doing the ads by yourself, you're like, I invested so much time into this ad. Why doesn't it work? Can we just retest it or something like that? But the reality is, if Facebook tells you this doesn't work, then it doesn't work, right? In most of the cases. So rather than trying to be smarter than the algorithm and trying to push something that I think should be working, I take it as, okay, I'm doing something wrong, right? Because if I would have done it right, Facebook would take that creative, push it to millions of people, and I would make millions of money, millions of dollars of money. Okay, so this is really important. Don't really take the emotion out of it. Okay. Another thing is this fluctuating ROAS, right? So what you will see, obviously, especially in the beginning, right, when you're trying to scale your spends, people are too focused on return on ad spend, right? You have to consider that you're testing a bunch of stuff, right? You're just getting started, and you're at a low spend level, right? I don't know, a couple $100 a day. And what happens during these days is that you don't have a lot of volume per day, right? So basically, one or two or three sales decide if it's a good day or a bad day. And in this phase, it's really, you should mainly focus on what are the learnings that I can take out of that, right? And where should I double down on so that I can cut everything else, okay? And this is what gets you to more profitability quickly. Okay, so it's normal that in the beginning you might have something like this, where one day is amazing, one day is bad, another day is bad, another day is amazing. But what I always teach is, and what I also did in this case, is we don't care about like the daily ups and downs. We care about the average across the last 7 days. Okay, this is the only thing that we care about. Don't worry about it. you'll have good days, bad days on any level, right? So it doesn't really matter. Even in my brands where we do like a million a month, you still have good days and you have bad days, but it doesn't matter, right? The only thing that matters is the average, okay? And this takes a lot of stress, a lot of like worrying and checking the ads manager every day and stuff. You should be checking it, but you should not be touching it every day, okay? Based on, results that are, from one day or something like that. Okay, now, again, scaling decisions, we make scaling decisions based on ultimately EBITDA, but one metric that I want to show you, and this is where we always start, is really the new customer return on ad spend and or the new customer CPA, okay? And this is important. This part is important, okay? The new customer part. Because people lose a lot of money with just focusing on return on ad spend in Meta, okay? But the problem is that the return on ad spend in Meta, Meta tries to claim or get credit for as many purchases as possible, right? So if maybe you've realized that on some occasions where you send you blast out a huge email and all of a sudden the return on ad spend on Meta is exploding and you see like a 3 return on ad spend, 4 return on ad spend. Wow, let's scale it. No, don't scale it because it's not because like the Meta ads didn't initiate these sales. This is just Meta, taking credit for what you've done in the back end. So what I want to say with that is that the return on ad spend that you see in Meta is flawed in many ways when you want to scale your new customer acquisition. Okay, because you also mix in like existing customers, right? Like all of these things are mixed into this return on ad spend, which makes it very hard to understand how it's actually driving business value or if it's driving business value, okay? So this is one thing. The other thing is that depending on the type of creative, you will have creatives that, and we're again in this view here, let's say bottom of funnel, you will have creatives that have a very high frequency. So what this means is they're basically getting shown over and over and over and over and over again to the bottom of the funnel, which exposes them a lot to people, right? So that they click it, they view it. And that's what, like, depending on the attribution settings that we're using, without getting too technical, but basically it's overvaluing these creatives, right? So which means they will always have a higher return on ad spend, but they're not the ones that, help fuel the funnel so that you can actually grow your business. There's a big misconception, okay? So without getting too technical, but I want you to understand is that don't trust the data and make decisions only based on the data in your ads manager. What you have to do is literally go into Shopify. The easiest thing that you can do is have an Excel sheet where you have, okay, this is my Shopify new customer revenue, last 7 days, okay? And this is my spend across all channels for the last 7 days. Okay, and then what you do is you divide those two by each other, and then you have your new customer return on ad spend for the last 7 days. Okay, and this way it shows you how much new customer revenue did I generate and how much did I spend, and that's what you have to look at, right? As long as this is on track, I don't care what's in your Meta ads. If it's on track, if you know that with this new customer return on ad spend, I'm left with a profit, scale, right? And this is really important. This is the same thing that we did in this case and any other case when I help brands. This is really important. We want to scale our business. We want to scale our EBITDA. Okay, exactly. And then when you see that this is consistent, then you just scale 20% a week. Or if it's going really well, you can scale 30% a week, right? And this might not seem like a lot, but as you can see in this case, it really compounds, right? Because you give also these customers that you acquire, you give them a little bit of time to come back, to put in, to come back as a customer, as a repeat customer. and generate profits, right? So then at some point, everything is stacking on top of each other, okay? Now, some interesting side effects. The wholesale, as I mentioned in the beginning, exploded of this brand. So again, this speaks to the strategy that we chose here, which is strong top of funnel creatives, right? And those led to like just millions and millions of people knowing about the brand. And this is a great example of basically, because some people say, yeah, well, like it's also conversions based, like we want to have more brand awareness. Why don't you want to have those two things together? Like that should be the goal, right? Brand performance, right? And this is what happened in this case, right? So massive brand awareness and really incredible results when it came to the wholesale. They essentially like, I don't know, like tripled their wholesale, right? Or even 4x their wholesale just in a couple of months, right? And the founder began to be recognized in public, which is something that I hear a lot of times, right? Working with a lot of brands, which might, seem uncomfortable in a way, but at the same time, it's just, if your goal is to grow your business, like don't be scared to jump in front of the camera and, just speak about your product, obviously with a certain structure and stuff, but you get the point. All right, results, recap, 9x growth to 400K per month in 9 months, more profit than ever before. Like they've never made so much profit. They never see so much opportunity when it comes to scaling their wholesale, scaling their, their e-commerce. And now, you go from a place where you're like stuck and you don't know what to do, you don't know what's next, to actively like dreaming again, right? And like looking at, okay, actually we can do this. Well, we didn't believe it's possible. Now it was possible. So what else is possible, right? So it completely shifts your mindset towards, hey, this is fun again. Like we can make it. We can do more. And that's what I really enjoy about all of this, right? To see this transformation of founders when they're like, wow, this is so much fun. And now I'm back to, enjoying it again, right? All with operating just 30 minutes a week in the ad account. As I said, business fun again, and now working towards 1 million a month. That's the next goal, and attainable goal, confidently. Okay. All right. I hope this was insightful to you. And if you have your e-commerce, your skincare e-commerce brand, I hope that you found a bunch of value here. If you say, okay, this is all nice and well, two options essentially. You try to implement all of that stuff by yourself, which you can. I hope you received. I gave everything away here. But if you say, I want somebody, to just guide me along the way and just make sure that I'm not making, certain mistakes or the same mistakes that anybody else is doing, then just click the link below and in the description for my mentorship. This is where I teach brand owners how to implement all of these things into their skincare company and basically help them scale their skincare company profitably without having to hire an agency, all in-house with a very small lean team of 1 to 2 people in the beginning. Or if you have an existing team, obviously, and you're, let's say, at 100K already or 500K a month, and you want to figure out how to get to 1 million a month and more, then I train your team on these systems so that you are more independent from agencies and essentially, can scale up from there. So ideally, you already make 1 million a year, and you want to get to 8 figures a year, right? But even if you're below that, also for that we have solutions. So yeah, looking forward to getting to know you eventually. And if not, enjoy the rest of my content on my YouTube channel, and see you on the next one. Take care. Bye bye.